What if the day William became king, the very first thing he did was dismantle the carefully constructed image of the woman who stood in his mother's shadow for decades? What if, in a move so swift and cold it left the palace gasping, he stripped Camilla of her Royal Highness style, and timed it for the most emotionally charged moment imaginable, the shadow of Diana's funeral itself? This is not the story the establishment wanted you to hear. This is a story of a son who waited, who watched, who calculated, and who, the moment the crown touched his head, moved with lethal precision. Welcome back. If you're new here, subscribe and hit the bell, because what you're about to hear changes how you see the entire modern monarchy. The official narrative is polished. The truth, according to those closest to the event, is far more brutal. Let's go back. Charles is gone. The announcement comes in the early hours. The nation is still half asleep when the news breaks. William is king. Instantly. No transition period. No long mourning. The machine of state demands continuity, and continuity means William must act. But William has never been one for empty continuity. Those who know him say the boy who walked behind his mother's coffin at the age of 15 never truly left that day. Something hardened in him. Something that waited for the exact moment the power was his alone. Within hours of the accession, sources inside Kensington Palace claim a private meeting took place. No cameras, no official record, just William, a handful of the most trusted aides, and one clear instruction: Camilla's Her Royal Highness is to be removed, not reduced, not adjusted for the new reign. Removed. Her Royal Highness, His or Her Royal Highness, is not a casual title. It is the golden thread that separates the inner circle from everyone else. It carries precedence, protection, and a certain untouchable aura. Stripping it is not a polite administrative change. It is a public execution of status. And the timing? That is what has people talking in hushed, furious tones. The move was reportedly timed to land in the same emotional window as the anniversary commemorations and the lingering cultural memory of Diana's funeral. Not the actual 1997 funeral. That would be impossible, but the carefully orchestrated public rituals that still revolve around that day every year. The flowers, the silence, the images of two young boys walking behind a coffin. William chose an atmosphere deliberately. Why? Because symbolism is everything in this family, and William understands symbolism better than almost anyone alive. Imagine the sequence. The nation is already emotionally primed. Diana's face is everywhere again. Documentaries, social media tributes, quiet conversations in living rooms. Into that atmosphere drops the cold, formal notice: Camilla will no longer be styled Her Royal Highness. She will be known simply by a lesser designation, stripped of the style that once elevated her above almost every other woman in the realm. The message is unmistakable. The woman who became queen consort will not carry the same royal radiance in the new reign. The son of Diana has redrawn the lines. Palace insiders described the reaction inside the Camilla camp as pure shock. Not sadness, not quiet acceptance. Shock, because for years the assumption had been that the transition would be gentle, that William, pragmatic and modern, would leave the settled arrangements largely intact. That assumption died the moment the crown became his. According to people familiar with the discussions, William's reasoning was simple and unsentimental. The monarchy must look forward, but it must also stop pretending the past never happened. The public's emotional attachment to Diana never faded. It only went underground, waiting. William, they say, decided the time for careful balancing acts was over. He is king now. The balancing act ends. The decision reportedly included more than just the letters Her Royal Highness. There were questions of residences, of official roles, of which events Camilla would still attend as a senior royal and which she would not. The stripping of the style was a visible tip of a much larger recalibration. A recalibration that put distance, visible, public distance, between the new king and the woman who had occupied the position once intended for his mother. Critics will call it vindictive. Supporters will call it justice delayed. The truth, as always with his family, sits somewhere in the uncomfortable middle. What no one disputes is the speed. William did not wait for a suitable moment. He did not allow the mourning period for his father to soften the blow. He moved while the ink on the accession documents was still wet. That speed is what has unsettled even some of his own allies. It revealed a side of William that the carefully managed public image rarely shows. A man capable of decisive, almost ruthless action when the power is finally his. Think about what that means. For decades, the narrative was that William was a steady one, the peacemaker, the one who would modernize without breaking things, the one who would protect the institution by not rocking it too hard. That narrative is now under severe pressure, because rocking the institution is exactly what he did. The public reaction, once the news leaked, was electric. Social media erupted. Documentaries about Diana spiked in viewership overnight. Old footage of the funeral procession circulated again. People who had never cared much about royal titles suddenly had very strong opinions about who deserved which letters in front of their name. And through it all, William said almost nothing publicly. No soft interviews. No carefully worded statements about respecting the past while looking to the future. Just the cold fact of the change, and the silence that followed. That silence is its own kind of power. There are those who claim this was never really about Camilla at all, that it was about sending a signal to the entire institution. The new king will not be managed. He will not inherit the compromises of the previous reign and simply live with them. He will rewrite the terms. Others say it is personal, that the boy who lost his mother never stopped measuring the distance between the life she should have had and the life that was taken from her and from him. That every year the anniversary came around, that measurement grew heavier, and that the moment he held the ultimate authority, the weight finally tipped. We may never know the private conversations that led to the decision. The palace does not release transcripts of those meetings, but we can see the result. Camilla's Her Royal Highness is gone. The style that once protected and elevated her has been withdrawn by the one person with the power to do it. And it happened in the emotional shadow of Diana's funeral, the event that still defines so much of the public's relationship with this family. The implications are still unfolding. What does this mean for the rest of the royal family? For the way future titles are granted or withheld? For the carefully constructed image of unity that the palace has spent decades polishing? Those questions are for the next part of the story, because this is only the beginning of what William has set in motion. The crown is on his head now. And the first move he made with it was not gentle. The decision was made. The formal notice went out. Camilla's Her Royal Highness was gone. But the real story did not end with a piece of paper. It began the moment that paper landed in the hands of the people who had spent years protecting her position. According to multiple accounts circulating among those with access to the private wings of the residences, the first confrontation was not loud. It was colder than that. Camilla, we are told, requested a private audience with a new king within hours of learning the news. She expected, at the very least, a conversation, an explanation, perhaps even a negotiation. What she received, sources claim, was something closer to a verdict already delivered. William did not raise his voice. He did not offer lengthy justifications. He simply made clear that the decision was final, that it had been considered for a long time, and that the monarchy under his reign would no longer carry the same symbolic weight for the woman who had once been his father's great love and his mother's great rival. The meeting, if the accounts are accurate, lasted less than 20 minutes. When it ended, Camilla left without the style she had held for years. The shockwaves moved outward fast. Senior members of the household were reportedly stunned. Some had assumed that any changes to titles would be gradual, carefully spun, and softened by time. Instead, they watched the new king move like a man who had already decided years earlier what the first act of his reign would be. One long-serving aide is said to have described the atmosphere in the days that followed as like the air had been sucked out of the building. People spoke in lower voices. Schedules were quietly rewritten. Invitations that once went out under Camilla's full style were adjusted overnight. And then there was the public. The announcement, timed as it was against the recurring emotional tide of Diana's memory, detonated online. Old footage of the 1997 funeral procession flooded timelines again. Images of two young princes walking behind their mother's coffin sat side by side with the cold, formal language stripping Camilla of Her Royal Highness. The contrast was deliberate and devastating. Commentators who had spent years defending the modernized monarchy suddenly found themselves on the defensive. Others who had never forgiven the circumstances of Diana's final years declared the moment a long overdue reckoning. William said almost nothing. That silence became its own statement. In an age when every royal move is usually accompanied by carefully crafted language about duty, continuity, and respect, the absence of soft words spoke louder than any speech. The new king was not asking for understanding. He was exercising authority. Those close to the situation claimed the decision was never only about Camilla as an individual. It was about the architecture of the institution itself. For decades, the palace had walked a tightrope, honoring Diana's memory in public while maintaining the position of the woman who had replaced her in private. William, according to this reading, decided the tightrope was no longer sustainable. The public's emotional loyalty had never fully transferred. The ghost of Diana still occupied a larger space in the national imagination than any living consort. By removing the Her Royal Highness, he forced the institution to stop pretending otherwise. There are reports of deeper calculation still. Some suggest William is quietly preparing a leaner, more focused monarchy, one less crowded with senior figures carrying heavy historical baggage. Stripping the style from Camilla was the most visible signal of that intent. It told every other member of the family that titles and styles are no longer automatic or permanent. They exist at the pleasure of the sovereign, and this sovereign is prepared to withdraw them. The longer-term strategy, if the more analytical voices are correct, is about control of the narrative. By acting so early and so decisively, William seized a story before anyone else could shape it. He did not allow a slow drip of speculation or a carefully managed transition. He made the break clean, public, and emotionally charged. In doing so, he reminded the country and the rest of the royal family that the boy who once walked behind a coffin is now the man who decides who walks beside the throne. Not everyone is celebrating. There are those who see the move as unnecessarily cruel, a settling of old scores dressed up as institutional reform. They argue that Camilla had already accepted a diminished public role in recent years, and that further humiliation served no purpose except personal satisfaction. Others counter that the real cruelty was the original arrangement that forced the public to accept a new queen consort while the memory of the previous one remained so raw. Both sides are talking past each other, as they always have. What is harder to dispute is a shift in power. For the first time in a generation, the monarchy has a sovereign who appears willing to use the full weight of his position without the usual layers of compromise. The old rules of careful balance are being rewritten in real time, and hanging over all of it is the timing. The deliberate placement of this act against the recurring shadow of Diana's funeral. That choice was not accidental. It was a message written in the only language this family truly understands: symbolism. The same public that once watched two small boys follow a coffin through the streets of London was now being asked to watch the son of one of those boys redraw the boundaries of royal status. The emotional continuity was intentional. The political message was unmistakable. We may never know the exact words spoken in that first private meeting. We may never see the internal memos that set the process in motion. But we can see the result. Camilla no longer carries Her Royal Highness. The style that once signaled her place at the heart of the institution has been withdrawn by the one person with the authority to do so. And it happened while the country was once again remembering the woman whose absence still defines so much of the royal story. William is king. The first major act of his reign was not a speech, not a tour, not a carefully photographed walkabout. It was a quiet, irreversible removal of a title that had become a symbol of everything left unresolved. The palace will continue to speak of duty and continuity. The official statements will remain measured, but the action has already spoken. The son of Diana has begun his reign by making clear that the past is not merely to be managed. It is to be answered. This is a story they hoped would remain behind closed doors. It is now out in the open, and the consequences are only beginning to unfold. If this account has made you see the current monarchy differently, share it. The official version is always cleaner. The real version is rarely so polite. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.